Hello everyone and welcome back to Law and Court Cases, and in today's video I'll be covering one of the most prolific female serial killers of all time. She claimed all of her killings were in self-defense after she was attacked by clients that she'd drawn to her for money. Her violent and volatile temperament meant she was a danger to those around her, especially men. In today's video, I'll be talking about Aileen Wuornos. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Aileen did not have a great start in life. She was born February 29th in Rochester, Michigan in 1956. She was the daughter of Diane Wuornos and Leo Pittman. She also had an older brother, Keith. Diane was only 14 when she had Keith and 16 and divorced by the time she had Aileen. Wuornos never met her father. In 1967, Leo was sentenced to life imprisonment for kidnapping and raping of a 7-year-old girl. Pittman was diagnosed with schizophrenia and committed suicide by hanging himself in prison on January 30th of 1969. In January of 1960, when Wuornos was almost 4 years old, Diane abandoned her children, deciding she did not want to be a mother anymore. She left them with their maternal grandparents, Laurie and Britta Wuornos, both alcoholics who legally adopted Keith and Aileen on March 18th of 1960. By the age of just 11, Aileen began engaging in sexual activities in school in exchange for cigarettes, drugs and food. And in an even more disturbing fashion, Aileen was also engaging in sexual activities with her own brother. Wuornos said that her alcoholic grandfather had sexually assaulted her and beaten her from when she was a child. Before beating her, he would force her to strip out of her clothes. In 1970, at the age of 14, she became pregnant after being raped by a family friend. In response to this assault, Aileen was sent away to have her baby in a home for unwed mothers. On March 23rd of 1971, Aileen gave birth to her little boy, but he was immediately placed up for adoption. A mere months after her son was born, she dropped out of school, and about the same time her grandmother died of liver failure. When Wuornos was just 15, her grandfather threw her out of the house, and she began living in the woods near her old home and supported herself through prostitution. This became a way of life for Aileen. Aileen's criminal actions soon began to haunt her, because on May 27th of 1974, at the age of just 18, Wuornos was arrested in Jefferson County, Colorado for driving under the influence, a DUI, and firing a .22 caliber pistol from a moving vehicle. She was later charged with failure to appear in court. In 1976, Wuornos hitchhiked to Florida, where she met 69-year-old yacht club president Louis Gratzfeld. They married quickly, and the announcement of their nuptials was printed in the local newspaper Society page. Although it was not a happy marriage, in fact it was violent. Aileen's behaviour did not change. If anything, it became more extreme. Wuornos was continuously involved in confrontations at their local bar and was sent to jail briefly for assault charges. Her marriage to Fell ended swiftly, and her violent behaviour was not subjected to just strangers. She was violent to her husband as well, at one point hitting Fell with his own cane. These actions led to Louis filing a restraining order against her within weeks of the marriage beginning. Following this, she returned to Michigan, when on July 14th in 1976, she was arrested at Bernie's Club in Mansalona, in Antrim County, and charged with assault and disturbing the peace for throwing a cue ball at a bartender's head. Wuornos was only 20 years old at this time. On July 17th, tragedy struck Aileen, as her older brother Keith died of esophageal cancer. Considering her incestuous past with her brother, it was clear to say she was obviously close. She went on to receive $10,000 from his life insurance policy. Wuornos and Fell annulled their marriage on July 21st after only 9 weeks of marriage. In August of 1976, Wuornos was given a $105 fine for drunk driving. She used the money inherited from her brother to pay the fine and spent the rest within 2 months, buying luxuries including a new car, which she wrecked shortly afterwards. Aileen had a track record of bad mental health and suicidal thoughts she acted on more than one occasion. Between the ages of 14 and 22, she attempted suicide 6 times, and in 1978 she shot herself in the stomach. On May 20th of 1981, Wuornos was arrested in Edgewater, Florida, for an armed robbery at a convenience store, where she stole $35 and 2 packs of cigarettes. She was sentenced to prison on May 4th of 1982 and released on June 30th of 1983. On May 1st of 1984, Wuornos was arrested for attempting to pass forged checks at a bank in Key West. On November 30th of 1985, she was named as a suspect in the theft of a revolver and ammunition in Pasco County. On January 4th of 1986, Wuornos was arrested in Miami and charged with car theft, resisting arrest and obstruction of justice for providing identification bearing her aunt's name. Miami police found a .38 caliber revolver and a box of ammunition in the stolen car. On July 2nd of 1986, Volusia County deputy sheriffs detained Wuornos for questioning after a male companion accused her of pulling a gun on him in his car and demanding $200. Wuornos was found to be carrying spare ammunition and police discovered a .22 caliber pistol under the passenger seat of her car. In 1986, a then 30-year-old Wuornos met 24-year-old Tyria Moore, a motel maid, at a Daytona Beach gay bar called Zodiac. Their relationship moved very quickly, and they were soon living together, and Wuornos supported them with her earnings as a prostitute. On July 4th of 1987, Daytona Beach police detained Wuornos and Moore at a bar for questioning regarding an incident in which they were accused of assault and battery with a beer bottle. In March 12th of 1988, Wuornos accused a Daytona Beach bus driver of assault. She claimed that he pushed her off the bus following a confrontation. Moore was listed as a witness in this incident. In addition to being her partner in crime, Aileen viewed Tyria, who she often called Ty, as the love of her life. At her trial, Wuornos stated, "It was a love beyond imaginable. Earthly words cannot describe how I felt about Tyria." Before her execution, Wuornos claimed she was still in love with Moore. Now moving on to the murders. Wuornos murdered 7 men within a period of 12 months. All the men were motorists between the ages of 40 and 65. Her first victim was Richard Child Mallory, age 51. He was an electronics store owner in Clearwater. The date of his murder was November 30th of 1989. Wuornos claimed that Mallory beat, raped and sodomized her after he drove her to an abandoned area for sexual activities. Mallory was Wuornos' first victim, and she claimed to have killed him in self-defense. Later, it became known that Mallory had previously been convicted of attempted rape in Maryland. 2 days after the murder, a Volusia County deputy sheriff found Mallory's abandoned vehicle, and on December 13th, his body was found several miles away in a wooded area. 2 bullets to the left lung were found to be the cause of his death. Her next victim was David Andrew Spears, age 47. He was a construction worker in Winter Garden. He was declared missing as of May 19th of 1990, and on June 1st of 1990, his naked body was found. Along US 19 in Citrus County, he'd been shot 6 times with a .22 pistol. Her next victim was Charles Edmund Caskadon. He was age 40 and a part-time rodeo worker. He was murdered on May 31st of 1990. On June 6th of 1990, his body was found in Pasco County. He'd been shot 9 times with a .22 caliber weapon. The body had been wrapped in an electric blanket and was badly decomposed when found. Witnesses claimed Wuornos in possession of Caskadon's car, and Wuornos had also pawned a gun identified as belonging to Caskadon. Her next victim was Peter Abraham Sims, age 65. He was a retired merchant seaman. In July of 1990, Sims left Jupiter, Florida for Arkansas, and on July 4th of 1990, his car was found in Orange Springs, Florida. Moore and Wuornos were seen abandoning the car, and Wuornos' handprint was found on the interior door handle. His body was never found. Troy Eugene Burris was her next victim. He was age 50. He was a sausage salesman for Ocala, Florida. On July 31st of 1990, he was reported missing, and on August 4th of 1990, his body was found in a wooded area along State Road 19 in Marion County. He had been shot twice. Next was Charles Richard Dick Humphreys, age 56. He was a retired US Air Force major, former state child abuse investigator, and a former chief of police. He was killed on September 11th of 1990. On September 12th of 1990, his body was found in Marion County. He was fully clothed and been shot 7 times in the head and torso. His car was found in Suwannee County. Wuornos' final victim was Walter Gino Antonio, age 62. He was a trucker, security guard and reserve police officer. On November 19th of 1990, Antonio's nearly naked body was found near a remote logging road in Dixie County. He'd been shot 4 times. 5 days later, his car was found in Brevard County. On July 4th of 1990, Wuornos and Tyria Moore abandoned victim Peter Sims' car after they were involved in an accident. Rhonda Bailey, who witnessed the accident, provided police with a description of the 2 women, which later led to a media campaign to locate them. Police also found some of the victims' belongings in pawn shops. Wuornos' fingerprint was found on a receipt at one of the pawn shops, and it matched the prints that were left in Sims' car. Wuornos had a criminal record in Florida, so samples of her prints were in a database. This is what led to her true name being revealed, as Aileen had used various aliases throughout her criminal past. At this point, the police believed it was a race against the clock to find and arrest Aileen, as police suspected she would kill again. On January 9th of 1991, Wuornos was arrested at the Last Resort Biker Bar in Volusia County on the pretext of an outstanding warrant in the name of Lori Growdy. Police located Moore the next day in Pittston, Pennsylvania. She agreed to elicit a confession from Wuornos in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Moore returned with the police to Florida, where she was put in a motel. Under police guidance, she made numerous telephone calls to Wuornos, pleading for her to clear her name. Aileen did not want to see Tyria go to prison for acts she committed. She loved her too much, and as a result, just 3 days later, on January 16th of 1991, Wuornos confessed to the murders. She claimed all the men had tried to rape her, and she killed them in self-defense. On January 14th of 1992, Wuornos went to trial for the murder of Richard Child Mallory. Although previous convictions are normally admissible in criminal trials, under Florida Williams rule, the prosecution was allowed to introduce evidence related to other crimes to show a pattern of illegal activity. And on July 27, 1992, Wuornos was convicted of Mallory's murder with the help of Moore's testimony. At her sentencing, psychiatrists for the defense testified that Wuornos was mentally unstable and diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. 4 days later, she was sentenced to death. Wuornos' defense made efforts during the trial to introduce evidence that Mallory was previously convicted of attempted rape in Maryland and served a sentence in a maximum security correctional facility, providing remediation for sexual offenders. Records obtained from the correctional institution showed that from 1958 to 1962, Mallory was committed for treatment and observation resulting from a criminal charge of assault with intent to rape. These records also reflect 8 years of overall treatment from the facility. In 1961, it was observed of Mr. Mallory that he possessed strong sociopathic trends. However, the judge refused to allow the records to be admitted in court as evidence and denied Wuornos' request for a retrial. On March 31st of 1992, Wuornos pleaded no contest to the murders of Charles Richard Humphreys, Troy Eugene Burris, and David Andrew Spears, saying she wanted to get right with God. In her statement to the court, she said, in part, "I wanted to confess to you that Richard Mallory did violently rape me, as I've told you, but these others did not. They only began to start to." On May 15th of 1992, Wuornos was given 3 more death sentences. In July of 1992, Wuornos pled guilty to the murder of Charles Edmund Caskoden. In November of 1992, she received her 5th death sentence. In February of 1993, Wuornos pleaded guilty to the murder of Walter Jr. Antonio and was sentenced to death again. No charges were brought against her for the murders of Peter Abraham Sims, as his body was never found. In all, Wuornos received 6 death sentences. Wuornos told several inconsistent stories about the killings. She claimed initially that all 7 men had either raped or attempted to rape her while she was working as a prostitute, but later recanted the claims of self-defense, citing robbery and a desire to leave no witnesses as the reason for her murder. During the interview with filmmaker Nick Broomfield, when Wuornos thought the cameras were off, she told him that it was, in fact, self-defense, but she could not stand being on death row, where she had been for 10 years at this point, and wanted to die. Wuornos was incarcerated at the Florida Department of Correctional Broward's Correctional Institution, death row for women, then transferred to the Florida State Prison for execution. Her appeal to the US Supreme Court was denied in 1996. In a 2001 petition to the Florida Supreme Court, she stated her intention to dismiss her legal counsel and terminate all pending appeals. She wrote, "I killed those men. Robbed them as cold as ice, and I'd do it again too. There's no chance of keeping me alive or anything, because I'd kill again. I have hate crawling through my system. I'm so sick of hearing this she's crazy stuff. I've been evaluated so many times. I'm competent, sane, and I'm trying to tell the truth. I'm one who seriously hates human life and would kill again." End quote. While her attorney argued that she was not mentally competent to make such a request, Wuornos insisted that she knew what she was doing, and a court-appointed panel of psychiatrists agreed. In 2002, Wuornos began accusing prison matrons of tainting her food with dirt, saliva, and urine. She said she had overheard conversations amongst prison personnel, trying to get me so pushed over the brink that I'd wind up committing suicide before the execution, and wishing to rape me before execution. She also complained of strip searches, tight handcuffing, door kicking, frequent window checks, low water pressure, mildew on her mattress, and, quote, catcalling in distaste and pure hatred towards me, end quote. Wuornos threatened to boycott showers and food trays when certain officers were on duty. She said, "In the meantime, my stomach growling away and I'm taking showers through the sink of my cell." Her attorney stated that Mrs. Wuornos really just wants to have proper treatment, humane treatment until the day she's executed. In the weeks before her execution, Wuornos gave a series of interviews to documentarian Nick Broomfield and talked about being taken away to meet God and Jesus and the angels and whatever is beyond the beyond. In her final interview, she once again charged that her mind was tortured after BCI and her head crushed by sonic pressure. Food poisonings and other abuses worsened. She said each time she complained, with the goal of making her appear insane, or to drive her insane, she also turned on the interviewer. "You sabotaged my ass, society and the cops and the system. A raped woman got executed and was used for books and movies and shit." Her final words caught on camera were, "Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my ass." Dawn Botkins, a childhood friend of Wuornos, later told Broomfield that her verbal abuse was directed at society and the media in general, not at him specifically. Wuornos' execution by legal injection took place on October 9th of 2002. She declined her last meal, which could have been anything under $20, and opted for a cup of coffee instead. Her last words were, "Yes, I would just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day, with Jesus, June 6th like the movie, Big mothership and all. I'll be back, end quote. She died at 9:47 a.m. She was the second woman in Florida and the 10th in the United States to be executed since the 1976 United States Supreme Court decision to restore capital punishment. After her death, Wuornos' body was cremated. Her ashes were scattered beneath a tree in her native Michigan by Wuornos' childhood friend Dawn Botkins. At Wuornos' request, Natalie Merchant's song Carnival from her album Tiger Lily was played at her funeral. Wuornos spent many hours listening to this album on death row. When Merchant found out about this, she gave permission to use the song in the closing credits of Nick Broomfield's documentary Aileen, Life and Death of a Serial Killer. Broomfield made speculations on Wuornos' state of mind and motives. He stated that I think the anger developed inside her, and she was working as a prostitute. I think she had a lot of awful encounters on the road, and I think this anger just spilled out from inside her, and finally exploded into incredible violence. This was her way of surviving. I think Aileen really believed that she had killed in self-defense. I think someone who's deeply psychotic and can't really tell the difference between something that is life-threatening and something that is a minor disagreement, that you could say something that she doesn't agree with. She would get into a screaming black temper about it, and I think she had caused these things to happen. And at the same time, when she was in those extreme moods, there was incredible humanity to her. According to some specialists, Wuornos' crimes have been related to her psychotic personality and psychotraumatic past. Assessed using the psychopathy checklist, Wuornos scored 32 out of 40, with the cut-off score being 30 to determine psychopathy. Wuornos was also known to meet the related criteria to determine borderline personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. According to Bryce Origgio, Wuornos' childhood sexual abuse and career in sex works irreparably damaged her, and it could be seen that traumatic experiences throughout most of her young life could play a part in Wuornos' psychological state, including her biological mother's departure, as well as her grandmother's ignorance of the abuse she endured from her grandfather, thus leading to the lack of development as a mother-daughter bond for Wuornos at a young age. The damage was then made worse because both Wuornos and her brother believed that their grandparents were their biological parents. But at age 11, they learned that this was not the case, which further damaged the relationship between Wuornos and her adoptive parents. Wuornos was also known to have early behavioural problems, such as having an explosive temper which limited her ability to make friends, as well as making it incredibly difficult for her to maintain relationships. Her traumatic upbringing, including her physical and sexual abuse, had been partially linked to the development of her borderline personality disorder. FBI profiler Robert K. Ressler briefly mentions Wuornos in his autobiographical history of his 20 years with the FBI. Writing in 1992, he said he often does not discuss female serial killers because they tend to kill in sprees instead of sequential fashion. He noted Wuornos as the sole exception. Ressler, who allegedly coined the phrase serial killer to describe murders seeking personal gratification, does not apply to women killing in postpartum psychosis, or to any murderer acting solely for financial gain, such as women who have killed a series of borderers or spouses. So that was the story of Aileen Wuornos. I feel she was a victim of her own mind. She was clearly a very troubled individual who had a lot of anger in her heart. It does not warrant her ending people's lives, of course, but I do feel like she was taken advantage of, and I do think she wanted to show the world how dangerous she really was. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a comment on what you'd like to see from me next time. I encourage you to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. Anyway, that is it for me. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.